Hello, everyone. How is everybody tonight on January 19th of 2026? Where is this year going? We're already 19 years into this year. It seems like yesterday I was taking video of like the 50 different fireworks displays I could see from my building. But here we are, and I hope everybody is doing well. I have a fantastic, spectacular, stupendous show for you tonight. Brought a lot of information. I'm surely not going to get to all of it, but that eases my mind. Then I don't worry about having to fill in anything at the end. It's been a little chilly here in Clearwater Beach since we got together. In fact, not only has it been chilly, it's been windy. And we had a storm blow through yesterday. And in fact, when was it? Last Thursday. It was so windy out there that they couldn't work on the building. You know, they have this scaffolding or whatever that, like window washers on the big skyscrapers, the thing held by cables or ropes or whatever. That's what they're using on this building. They have anchors at the top of the building, and then these things are, go up and down the side of the building with these pulleys or whatever. It was so windy last Thursday, it didn't work. I heard them show up. I heard them go up the building, and then before I could hear some shouting back and forth, and then before you know it, all of them were down and they were gone for the day. They did come. It wasn't as windy on Friday. But that is, how it's been and certainly yesterday, of course, yesterday was Sunday. Had they tried to work yesterday, I don't think that I've been able to work yesterday. And today they didn't work. Of course, today is Martin Luther King Day, and a lot of places are closed. And I think given that this is a union job, no work on Martin Luther King Day. Of course, post office, other government offices, businesses closed today as well. So happy Martin Luther King Day for all of you here in the United States. So when I've been going out, I've actually had to put long sleeves on, but I've not yet had to, I've not turned the heat on in my condo because that would just be sacrilegious. It's against my religion since I've moved to Florida. But I do, the advantage that my condo has here is that even though I have this beautiful view, very fortunate to have this view and everything, I don't have a lot of windows in this place. I have the big window here, like where the sliding glass door is. I have the sliding glass door over in my bedroom over there, but the curtains are always pulled shut on that over there to get that room as dark as possible, even though it points west. But on the east side, I really don't have anything. So it's very easy to keep this place cool or warm. It's very easy to do that, even though this is Florida and all the sun and everything else. Considering the square footage and everything, I don't have a lot of, ways for the sun to get in, even though I can tell that some of the items over here that are next to the window when the sun is going down, this points west over to my left. You can tell some of the things have faded and everything. But it stays pretty cool. I really don't have to run the air conditioning crazy, and I never have to turn on the heat. It just kind of stays somewhere in the middle. And I guess that's one of the nice things in living in this building. But it has been chilly. Even today, it's been chilly. And of course, my dad's, I think the wind chill got into negative degrees, at least in Fahrenheit. Glad I am not there. So as you can see, as far as what is on the list tonight, the guaranteed list, we might call it, I'm going to talk about the 1982 disappearance of Timothy Foltz. And I'm most surprised by this disappearance because it's not on the Charlie Project. That's really surprising to me. But it is on NamUs. And really, I can't even remember how I even found out about this disappearance, but I've known about it for a while. And so I'm going to analyze it tonight. I'm going to guess most of you have not heard of the disappearance of Timothy Foltz, but this is a perfect example of how, too many people who take an interest in these things, or hosts of programs, YouTube channels, of course, they hit all the main ones, as I have kind of too, but I also have covered like 400. But there are all these kind of unknown disappearances that have these twists and turns and interesting facts and things that then don't get any attention. They get ignored. I think Timothy Foltz is one of those. So I'm going to talk to you about it tonight. Also, I want to talk to you about a missing mayor who he went missing, and now he has been identified. I'm going to get into why did it take this long. And then I had this on my agenda for last week, didn't get to it. I want to talk about this Texas disappearance that also got solved through DNA. And I think it's a really good example of how using logic is not a very good way to solve disappearances. I know that's really, I don't know, I've been doing this for over 9 years now. I may be the first person to ever say that in the history of disappearances. It's just been my experience. And I think that this disappearance in Texas that has been finally resolved is a good example of that. You've heard me talk about this before, and I run into it with guests, with some of you, other people who start talking to me about, well, it doesn't make sense. And I said, since when does any of this stuff have to make sense? We have enough examples of disappearances that have been resolved that don't make any sense. It happened. So why are you always defaulting to the logical side of this? And I'll get into that in a bit. As for what's going on with me since last week, maybe some of you who follow me on Facebook, my private page, I got a 5-year reminder memory today that 5 years ago I posted this VHS video of me doing this song in a high school musical. We did Happy Days in my sophomore year. And it was spectacular. And I played Ralph Melf, and I got a song to sing in it. One of the very few people, even though it was a musical, I was one of the few people who got a solo and acted out and everything. I played Ralph Melf, and it is spectacular. The thing is, I remember practicing for that. I remember doing the choreography for that, learning that. Some senior girls put the choreography together. And I still remember the words to that song. It's so weird. But go check that out. I'm singing to a waitress who I have an infatuation with. I'm attracted to her, like her a lot, and I don't know how to express it. And it's pretty funny. And the girl that I'm singing to, at least her single name, of course, we're all like juniors and sophomores, juniors and seniors. Her name was Rayanne Sober, was her name. And then the two guys who are with me performing it, one who plays Potsy, his name is, I'm not singing tonight, no DD, but I can tell you the lyrics to show that I actually absolutely remember the lyrics. Not singing tonight. Jason Mamross plays Potsy in the production. And then Matt Cericio, who ended up marrying a girl in my high school class, who actually we went to college together, and actually our parents have been longtime friends for decades. His name is Matt Cericio. He plays Fonzie, and he also makes an appearance in the video. But I am the star of that particular part of the show. So I played it. I have it on VHS, had a VCR. set my tripod with my phone up, whatever phone I had at the time, and just filmed that part of it and posted it. So if you are friends with me on Facebook, you got to go check it out. That is me, my sophomore year. So I am, of course, it's with VHS, so the quality isn't that great, and it's been played a few times. So the quality's been degraded. I am 16 years old in that video. But the lyrics, if I must tell you all of them, just to prove that I'm not lying, that I still remember the lyrics from how many years though? That would be 39 years ago. It's Betty is my angel. I love her so. She wears her hair like Bridget Bardot. She is so lovely. She is so fine. My dreams would all come true if she could be mine. Betty goes stay with me. When we go out dating, I'll see all the other guys looking at me. And then I will tell her at her front door some things I've never told a girl before. Betty goes steady with me. Those are the lyrics, just to prove that I still know them. I don't. It's so weird. And then at 55, sometimes I can't remember what I did last week. And in fact, even when it's with disappearances, sometimes I have to really think, what was that disappearance from a month ago? What was it about? Sometimes I really have a problem with that. But I remember the lyrics to a song from sophomore year in high school. Crazy. So check that out. Also, it's starting on my diet. It's going well. I'm calling it the ex-girlfriend diet because it's no fun at all. No sugar, no saturated fats. So you start thinking about everything that has sugar in it. And then you think about saturated fat. Of course, that's anything like that comes from a cow. So milk and meat, things like that. And then a lot of like potato chips and things like that have saturated fat in them. And like I said, no fun at all. And I'm also doing, restrictive calories and everything, but it's working. Right now I'm down to about 180 pounds. And I was probably 185 when I came back from Pennsylvania at the beginning of December. And my goal was 170. So I have a ways to go, but it's been a little difficult, but not overtly difficult. But you start sitting down and thinking about everything you normally eat. And then you start thinking about, because like, for example, like if you eat ketchup has sugar in it. I don't eat ketchup, so that's easy for me. But if you eat ketchup, it has sugar in it. Can't eat it if you're doing this diet. And, of course, like salad dressing. So it's great to eat vegetables. Can't put hardly any kind of salad dressing on it. And then, like I said, with saturated fats, that's going to be all your meats and everything. Now, I did eat what my sister sent me out of because it was a gift. But the only meat I'll be eating from now on is like chicken breast and turkey. And I'm fine with that. And I've been making smoothies and things. And it's been a little difficult. It certainly is a change, but I like a challenge. And I really do need to, like I said last week and maybe times before that, need to lose a few pounds. So I got 10 pounds to go. As far as midsection, want to get down to like 31, 32 inch waist, and I'm at like 36 right now. So we got a ways to go. Lori's asking me, no chicken wings. I may that may be a treat one of these days, Lori, once I show that I'm really down solid into the 170s. That may be a treat. I appreciate you being concerned about my chicken wings. But yeah, chicken wings are no bueno. No bueno at all. So before I get any further, let's see who is in here. Charlie, how are you? Uncle Brian is out seeing his son and his grandson. Charlie, maybe you knew that. Seeing the new addition to the family. How good to see you, Cranky. Yes, let's go. D, how are you doing tonight? Good to see you. Glenn from Michigan. You're in Michigan. Good to see you, Glenn. 5.1 earthquake where, Amy, today? I did not see that. Lori, I didn't hit the gym, Charlie, but I did hit the like button. Yeah, we'll get to that. And that's a good start. D, hey, y'all. Lori, bitterly cold in PA. Sorry to hear that, Lori. Yeah, I know my dad's there. It's no fun. Cranky, greetings to all. Good to see you. I'm setting up a new washer and dryer as we speak. Okay, I'll try to keep you entertained. LaFord, good to see you. D, yes, cold in New Jersey. Fishing, what's up? Oklahoma was 30 time by the time we made it home. That's not too bad, D, I guess. Dee Dee, howdy. Saw it. You were all great singers. Thanks, Dee Dee. I'm not singing tonight. No, I bet I did do the lyrics as I heard. Lisa, good to see you. Yep. Why not? I'm just not doing that, Lori. Hello, Haley. What's going on? New member. Tanya, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the support. What Tanya's done there is hit the super chat button or join button to the channel, and all of you can do that as well if you can find it on your app. Thank you, Tanya. You're very generous. Yeah, D. Well, carbs are there's two different kinds of carbs. D, there's simple carbs, which are no good, and then there's complex carbs, which are just fine. Like complex carbs would be like potatoes. Not fried, of course, but simple carbs would be like bread and things like that, which are no good. They do have sugar-free ketchup and salad dressing. Yeah, but you have to really look for it, Kathleen. You just can't take it for granted, I only eat 4 hours a day, basically whatever I want. I go to the gym every day. Good for you, Charlie. Good for you, Amy. Indio, California, 5.1 earthquake. Didn't know that. Hello, Rockford. Good to see you. And we have snow and ice coming this next week. Well, you better can't stay warm there, D. So thank you all for showing up tonight. I know the college football championship's on tonight. Maybe you have one, ears on here, eyes on that, something like that. So that's the diet I'm on. And Charlie, 4 hours a day. I just don't know if I could do that. But we'll just have to see. And trivia, kind of a mixed bag this past week. Last Wednesday, we took a 0. That wasn't good. But on Saturday, the team I was on, we came in 3rd place. And it's fairly competitive over there. We're a small team of only 4 of us. So can't necessarily complain. We were 2nd and going to the final question. We didn't know it. So one team passed us up. But take a 3rd place over there. That's not so bad. If only we had come in 3rd place on Wednesday, which is a whole different group of people. And of course, that one over at Finley's is the seasonal. So we got some time to kind of make up. I think we fell from 2nd place to 9th place in 1 week. Not good. And I have to admit, sometimes I wonder if I'm helping these teams or not. Just to be honest, I'm a smart guy, but it often seems like the stuff I know is stuff they know as well. It'd be nice if I knew some things they didn't know. I'm perfectly fine with people knowing stuff that I don't know. But it would be nice if it was turned around and I knew some things they didn't know. And that's how you make a really, really good team. It just hasn't worked out that way yet. And then as far as my car goes, Thursday, going to the garage, going to take a look at the oil usage and then also the check engine lights on. I'm sure it's connected somehow. But I've convinced myself either way. I don't think that I'm going to get a new engine out of Hyundai. Of course, I'll talk to just an independent garage I'm going to on Thursday. Certainly we'll talk to them about it over there. They'll certainly have at least an idea. I'm sure they looked at many Hyundais, Sonatas, and cars with this engine that have had this similar problem because it's well known. And I'm sure over there they'll be able to give me some insight into whether they think a new engine is possible or not. So it's going to come down to 2 things. Either it's one of those diagrams where yes or no, you go this direction. If, they say, you know what, I just don't know, or be able to gonna do much about this looking at it now. Then I'll just try to get as much money out of it as I can. And if they tell me, well, we think it's going to be fine, we'll fix the check engine light, and to stop the oil usage, maybe you need to use a thicker oil, I'll start doing that. And as soon as I am sure that that's kind of fixed the problem and it's not using as much oil as has been, I'm selling it. Either way, the car is getting sold. So a new car is in my future, not a brand new car, but a different car is in my future. And I've already started narrowing down my choices. Safe to say I'm going to go with something a little more fun this time around. So I'll let you know how it goes. And I guess you'll just have to see. It's going to take a little while, I think, because the kinds of vehicles that I'm looking at, not they're for sale out there. There's just not a ton of them. It's not like I'm going to be looking for a Honda Civic. Let's put it that way. I'm looking for certain kinds of cars in certain years, certain price range. Color doesn't matter. Miles matters a little bit, but I'm looking for the right situation. And really, there's just not a ton, even though I'm looking at like at least 3 different cars by 3 different manufacturers. The cars for sale out there is a little limited. So it might take me a little time, but I think this is the way I am going to go. And I'll let you know when I do. Fishing says, yes, watching game, listening to, totally fine. Fishing, that sounds healthy. Something with no roof. You know, Charlie, I'm not a big convertible fan, to be honest with you. Brian and I we've had this talk before. Not a big convertible fan. So, I mean, at least one of the cars I'm looking at, they do make it in a convertible. I hope to avoid getting one of those in a convertible. All right. So, or 2 of them, actually 2 of them, that's really not my choice, even though it's Florida and everything. I had one convertible in my life when I lived in Las Vegas. I have to tell you, it didn't do much for me, to be honest. And what's wrong with the Civic? Nothing wrong with the Civic. All right. So I know no matter what model I picked out, maybe somebody was going to critique me on that. Nothing wrong with the Civic. All I'm saying is there's a bunch of Civics have been made. So there was a bunch of them used for sale. Honda's great cars. Great cars. I'm just saying from a standpoint of availability. There's like for every 10 Civics that are out there for sale used, there may be one of the kind of cars I'm looking at. So nothing wrong with Civics. You know, you want a Civic, go buy a Civic. Great. I've been driving a Hyundai Sonata for 9 years now. I would like to go back to something a little more adventurous. Before that, I had a Taurus. And the car I had before that wasn't so bad. It was a Pontiac Grand Prix Jeep TP, which was a really nice car, but the transmission went on it. And, I've had some boring cars over the years, and I think I'm ready for a change. So there you go, Tanya. Not criticizing your car choice or anything at all. It's just what's available out there. And because I've been working at that in my spare time, and we'll see what goes on Thursday when they look at my car. All right. As you are watching tonight, please give this show a thumbs up. I think that that really helps the algorithm. And if you are new, if you're just for the first time saying, oh, there's this YouTube channel, I see. Subscribe and support Unfound through a variety of ways. There are a variety of ways you can do that. Patreon.com. You can, of course, as Tanya's already done, hit the subscribe or hit the join button for this YouTube channel. I really, really appreciate that, Tanya. Thank you. You can hit the super chat down below the comment section as well, depending on the device that you're using. And then there's also paypal.me/unfound podcast. I'm not going to use the name of it, but as I'm thinking about this, my assistant Emily, and by the way, Emily is mainly responsible for bringing to all of you this Friday's disappearance, of course, which I will talk about before I'm done tonight. But Emily brought this disappearance along with the guest, and I cannot thank her enough. But Emily has been sending me clips of this YouTube channel she's watching. It's another true crime channel. I'm not going to mention any names. I wouldn't do that. The host is overtly aggressive about getting people to support the channel and begging for money and things like that. And so she sends me these clips, and I was like, I don't know what to tell you, Emily. That's not anything I would ever do. So, and I think this YouTube channel is fairly popular. And it was what's the funny part is about it. Once again, not saying any names. But it's just kind of funny. I realize as I've continued to tell you, I don't know if anybody believes me or not. I don't make a lot of money. I really don't know how many people are making a ton of money doing true crime YouTube channels. I know that their stories are out there, and I see, whatever her name is from True Crime Junkie and everything else. But I don't know. Nobody should ever think because I live where I live and everything that I make a ton of money doing this. In fact, I would tell anybody that if I weren't doing this, my net worth might be higher than it is now. But it's a passion of mine. And when you can take, I think, the money side out of it, even though I want you to contribute, if you think myself and the channel and the podcast deserve it. When you stop being concerned about that, it's amazing how great work you can do. It's really true. It really, really is true. And, I think I'm fortunate that I got into this older in life, unlike a lot of people. And so I've worked real jobs, and I've been able to save, and some things have come my way, fortunately. And so that gives me a lot of freedom to not overtly worry about whether what I'm doing here makes a ton of money. But never get the idea that this is a huge moneymaker. It's not. Never be confused. I'm going to be talking about John Lorden here in a moment. I don't have any idea how well he does and all these other people. I have no idea. But what these clips that Emily sent me, it's like, that seems a little bit over the top to me, so, maybe, as Lori's bringing up, I know that please, Lori, if you think, don't try to guess. I'm not going to tell you who it is. So don't even try to guess. Don't put any host names or programs in the comment section. Do not do that. I'm not going to verify it. Maybe if I was a 501c3 or something like that, maybe it would be different, but I'm not. So, I don't know, All right. What's most important to me is that, as all of you know, I try to help all of these people out for free. I've never charged a guest a penny. In fact, even when it goes way back to that Jennifer Perry FOIA that I got, and it was pages and pages and pages, and I think it was like $140 to get it. That was out of my pocket. I got it. I gave it to her family. I never charge any guests anything. So that's me. If you believe, I got to, after previous things that I've done in my life, I got to work myself into heaven if you believe in that type of thing. All right. So let's get started on tonight's show. Once again, I'm going to leave the disappearance of Timothy Foltz to kind of toward the end, like I did last week. because I do want to talk about these things. And like I said, I've missed a couple things because I ran out of time over the past couple weeks. But first, I want to say, I can officially say, because I've signed the paperwork, I will be at this gathering called Private Eye, EYECON, Private Icon, EYECON 2026 in May. That'll be May 15th to the 17th. And I'll get into, well, Ed, what are you doing? I'll get to that. But this was something that was brought to me by a friend of the podcast, John Lorden. And we were talking about, we're going to be working together, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But we had talked about doing something together, covering a disappearance together here in 2026. And through that, he then said, hey, do you know about this Private Icon thing? Ed, I really think you should go. I think it'd be a good time. I think that I'd like to hang, we've talked so much that, we get together, hang out. I think that's, and of course I did my usual disclaimer to him. I hope this isn't like Crime Con or anything. And I think this is, because I've made my feelings about that well known. So gonna give this a shot. We'll see. But I will be there. I really don't know what I'm actually going to do there. I know they're going to have some seminars and some panels, but I've not been told what to do. Of course, I am a specialist. I only do unsolved disappearances, unlike, for example, John Lorden. He does a little bit of everything. I'm a specialist, so maybe that's going to limit how much I can take part in a lot of different things, whatever they're going to be doing there. But I just want to make sure that, if they're going to have like a panel on serial killers or something like that, then of course I talk about the Zodiac Killer here, but that's really not what I do. The podcast isn't about serial killers. So I'm going to probably eventually have to tell the people that are putting it together that I want to be involved, but I'd really just like to stick to my specialty. If that means that I'm only involved in one or two things, I'm fine with that. Totally, totally fine. Even though I think I may have something to offer just because of the work that I do, I want to make sure that I just stick, as the saying goes in the 21st century, I just want to stay in my own lane. There are going to be people there who do a lot more regarding serial killers, or if they're going to have unsolved murders, or they're going to do, I don't know what they're going to do. These are just examples, but if they're going to have something like on Gabby Petito or John Benet Ramsey, even though I have talked about those murders on here, it's really not what I do. And certainly I shouldn't be up in a seminar like that talking about something that's really not my specialty. So hopefully the organizers will understand that, and what that will eventually mean, I don't know. But it's going to be May 15th to the 17th. And of course, as you know, I always come prepared. I'll be able to, I got all sorts of ideas of presentations that I could do regarding disappearances. Of course, the one that I've done at colleges, and I've done some other things. So my mind is always ready to talk to people about disappearances. But it's May 15th to the 17th, and it's going to be on the campus of Middle Tennessee State. And I guess it's open to the public. And although I don't think it's like Crime Con, I think it's a little smaller than that, more focused, maybe a little more serious. Of course, I'll go and find out, and I'll let you know when I come back what it was like. But so, I don't know. If you live around Tennessee, what would that be? Ohio, Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky. I don't know, what other state? Indiana or something like that. Maybe you want to consider making a day drive down there. And I certainly well before it starts, the schedule of events and everything will be presented, and I'll surely know by then what I'll be doing and who I'll be with and all of that stuff. So if you'd like to stop in and say hi, I think that would be an opportunity to do that, because otherwise I just stayed down here in my state of Florida. Once again, May 15th to the 17th, that's a Friday through Sunday. If you're wondering, I think that I'll get there maybe the day before on the 14th. I don't know if I'll be there all the days. I have no idea. And as far as me going to one of these, I said that I would never go to Crime Con. Really did not talk about Crime Con when it was happening. Was that a few months ago? Kind of let that go. But, I'm hoping that this is something a little more serious. I just think that Crime Con is all entertainment driven. It's personality driven. I know a lot of my guests have gone there. I know some hosts and people that I respect have gone there and everything. That's just not my type. It's just really not my type of thing. So I'm going to give this a shot though, and we'll see how it goes. And what's everybody saying about this? They didn't. I can think. Okay, if replacement parts will be difficult to find if it's a rare car. Jacqueline, I know that these are not what I would call rare cars. There's just not many for sale. These are cars that people buy and they kind of keep them. So you have to jump on them when they do get sold. But replacement parts for all these cars are fairly common. But yeah, but I appreciate the concern, Jacqueline. Thank you very much. Hey, if you see Steve Fisher, even Jason, who I know, well, D, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. Before then, Rockford, if there's a panel discussion on dog searches, you have to get on it. Why? Why, Rockford? So a brawl can get started. See, Rockford, that's the kind of stuff I'm worried about. I'm going to be honest. Those are the things, because I do bring a unique point of view to some of these things, and I know it's controversial. Well, but yeah, thank you for stating the obvious, Rockford. But mark it on your calendars if you're in the area. If you want to stop in, I'm guessing there's tickets or something. I don't know yet, but I just signed the paperwork last week. But May 15th to the 17th at Middle Tennessee State University. I was just through Tennessee a few years ago when I was driving up for that big disc golf tournament in Illinois. So I guess I'm looking forward to it. So there you go. Moving on, regarding being that I brought up John Lorden, we are going to be working together. And don't want to really reveal the disappearance yet, but I put all the material. I got the okay from the family member. I told her that I wanted to bring in somebody else who I really respect to kind of look over this with me and kind of work together on it. She gave the okay. So I sent all of the materials that I've collected so far over to John, and he's actually emailed me back. And I'm guessing maybe within the next few days, maybe we'll have a Zoom call or something to kind of go over how we want to do this and split, the topics up and everything. Because there are a lot of different things that go in a lot of different directions. And he may feel more comfortable with certain things, and I feel more comfortable with certain things. We'll just have to work it out. And when that's all going to happen, come out in public, I don't know. But we are going to be working together. And when the time comes, I'll let you know what the disappearance is. So I know a lot of you follow his channel here on YouTube, and I don't know if he's announced it yet, but I'm the one that can't. I mean, we both said we wanted to work together, but I was the guy who, we really just said we wanted to do something. And then I reached out to a family about a disappearance. And once I started talking to the family member, and then we started talking, and then she sent me all of this stuff. I was like, wow, this, I think this is it. And so I brought it up. So technically, I guess I've picked the topic that John, of course, John's very, does a lot of disappearance stuff. So not concerned about that at all. So be looking for that in the next few months, I think. All right, let's go to this Texas case solved first, because I was on my agenda for last week, and I just didn't get to it. Ran out of time. So I'm going to read many of you saw this. I think this is even posted in the discussion group on Facebook. Let's just see what everybody's saying here. D says, well, I may have to figure out why Summer Wells' case, the dog did no good, is because of limestone. I don't know. Hello, Inca. How are you? Good to see you, D. Inca, saw your Facebook post. If you can't spot the sucker in the first 30 minutes, yeah, then you are the sucker. That's right. That's from one of my favorite movies, Rounders. That is Ink and Innings. Yes. Oh, it's Cherie. Of course it's Cherie in the blue with the wrench. Yes. Yes, Cherie. How are you? We got to get you, we've been doing some things behind the scenes, Cherie. I need to text you and see how much you want to be involved. I've been meaning to do that. So maybe text you tomorrow. A lot of things, projects behind the scenes that are going on. I think you'd like to know about them. Maybe you can find a place in your schedule for something to work on, if you're interested here in 2026. All right. The oldest missing persons case in Texas, speaking of Cherie, has finally been solved thanks to an incredible breakthrough. On January 14th, 1973, Norman Prater was reported missing to the Dallas Police Department. And the 16-year-old was last seen walking with his friends in East Dallas. Fox 4 Dallas Fort Worth reported. Later that year, on July 8th, so roughly 6 months later, an unidentified white male was killed in a hit-and-run accident on Highway 35 in the Texas city of Rockport, in what appeared to be an unrelated incident in the time. And what they mean unrelated, meaning the disappearance and this hit and run did not seem to be connected. And, this Rockport is not near Dallas, so we can understand why. But this is kind of like where I'm going with this news story. The body of the victim remained unidentified for 52 years. So from 1973 until 2025, until the Dallas Police Department detective Ryan Dalby re-examined the case and was able to establish a potential link between the two seemingly separate incidents. This was made possible by a new photo of the unidentified victim found in late 2025 by the Aransas County Medical Examiner's Office. They then passed this on to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, who then gave it to Dalby. The news said, according to the outlet, Dalby and a forensic analyst with the Texas Rangers believed the photo likely resembled Norman. So they thought that, all right, we have a picture of Norman. He goes missing. 6 months later, this guy hit and run in Rockport, nowhere near Dallas, but 6 months later. And they thought that the hit and run victim resembled Norman. To confirm this, they contacted his older brother, Isaac, and he positively identified the hit and run victim as his brother. This resolution stands as a testament to the Dallas Police Department's commitment, and don't break your arms slapping yourself on the back there, Dallas Police. Commitment to the case as we pursue and the families we serve, no matter how much time has passed. Dallas Police Chief Daniel Como said in a statement, Detective Dalby's dedication, skill, and compassion have not only served a historical case, but have performed the most vital duty of our missing persons unit, providing closure to a grieving family. There is no closure, Police Chief. After 50 years of uncertainty, Mr. Isaac Prater has now received answers regarding his brother's disappearance. The Dallas Police Department extends its deepest sympathies to the Prater family and commends the interagency cooperation and investigative perseverance that made this resolution possible. Like I said, they just get too a little self-congratulatory with all this. I've brought this up before. People Magazine, which is where I got this article, has contacted the Aransas County Medical Examiner's office for comment, and I guess at the publication of that, they had not gotten back. All right, so we have this young man. He's in the Dallas area. He's with his friends. They go out. He doesn't come back. I'm not sure if this disappearance was on the Charlie Project. I don't know if I checked, and now that it's resolved, it's probably not on NamUs, so I don't even know if it was on NamUs originally. Of course, this happened way before NamUs started, but you know what I mean. So I'm not sure how well this disappearance was even known in the Dallas area. I have no idea. It's certainly not a Mara Murray, Jennifer Kesse, Brian Schaefer, Jody Huisentruit disappearance, certainly. So he's with his friends. They go walking off. 6 months later, some guy gets hit and run, gets killed by a car. And at the time in 1973, they couldn't put it all together. And then in 2025, they looked at his disappearance. They had this unidentified body, and they finally did put it together. And I'm not here to criticize. I certainly believe that at least in 1973 technology, of course, with no internet, even anything like that, I think we can understand why some kid walking off in Dallas and then some male adult or close to adult getting hit far away, but still in Texas, that they wouldn't be able to put that together. Surely the police in Rockport didn't know that Norman Prater went missing, and surely the police in Dallas didn't know anything about this hit and run that occurred in Rockport. So once again, I'm not trying to give them, either of them, a hard time, but this just shows with technology, just with the internet, with DNA, on and on and on, this is how this stuff can be brought to resolutions. And there's stories like this happening all the time, but this did get quite a bit of attention, especially since they consider it to be Texas's oldest unsolved missing persons case. Here's what I tell you, that is certainly not true. It may be hyped up on that by that. That may be what it says in their books and everything, but I can assure you, this is 1973. This is within my lifetime. Are we really saying that everybody who went missing before 1973 in the state of Texas, one of the most populated states in the union, all of the other disappearances before that have been resolved? Of course not. But that's the way it was presented. That's the way it was presented, and caught a lot of attention for national news. So my perception of this is that I don't know if this could have been solved sooner. Yeah, maybe within the, I guess if we really want to get picky about this, yeah, could it have been solved 10 years ago or 15, 20 years ago, given that the internet's about the same as it was back then? Of course, a lot more sophisticated. Once again, you know what I mean? Of course, DNA existed 20 years ago, I guess, but I'm not going to get too crazy about that. I'm not. But I do think, though, this is how things have changed, that if this were to happen today, and in fact, we're going to get into this when I talk about the missing mayor, because I'm really confused on that one, that I think this kind of disappearance with a hit and run would be solved a lot more quickly. Very, very sure. This is how things have changed. Of course, the big question is, well, what was Norman doing during those 6 or 7 months between him walking off with his friends and then him getting killed in a hit and run 6 or 7 months later? We may never know. Of course, I would have questions. Well, who were these friends? What did they say at the time? What did they tell police back in 1973? Well, Norman was with you. What happened? There's nothing anywhere, nowhere that says anything about that. So this is still a big question mark. I mean, could it be that one of these kids was one of the one driving the car and hit Norman 6 months later? I guess we could be open to that. I don't think there are any facts disputing that. But the really, and the main point that I want to make, and we should say, it does seem though that Norman's picture was out there after he went missing. I guess what I'm also saying is he must have really gotten messed up in that hit and run. That they couldn't publish a picture of him and match it up, eventually much quicker than they did between Norman Prater. Of course, a picture, they would surely have him being 14, 15, 16 years old. And they surely took a picture of the dead body, the guy that got hit in the hit and run. He must have gotten really messed up to not be able to, put the facial features together that they had to rely, eventually on DNA and everything, to come along now. So that is also something that's on my mind. But this is a perfect example why I keep saying logic is not a good way to try to analyze disappearances, because there is no logic that would be able to explain a disappearance like this. There is nothing that would lead you from Dallas, Texas, with Norman Prater going missing, to really logically getting to the idea that, he was still alive 6 months later and got hit, got killed in a hit and run somewhere else in the state of Texas. No logic is going to get you there. Instead, what is much more useful, even though I still don't think this would have been helpful. I think, like I said, I think this is one of those disappearances that, given the time and history that it occurred, unless something was really lucky at the time, it's just not going to happen. But this is why I continue to state that statistics and putting odds on things is a much better way to analyze disappearances than through logic. Now, with this particular one, even that, what are the odds that a guy is going to walk off with friends, and then 6 months later, he's still alive and gets hit by a car? That is a pretty rare set of circumstances. But has it not? The funny thing is, this has actually happened more recently. It's a disappearance that was not able to be featured on Unfound because it got solved before I could get to it. And I even forget the guy's name, but coincidentally, this disappearance also started in Texas. He was the guy who went missing on Super Bowl Sunday. And he got hit by a car, but not in Texas, but in the state of Washington, just a couple days, like 36 hours after he was still at home in Texas. And nobody to this day has figured out how he got from Texas to where he got hit by a car in Washington. Somebody can surely look that up and put the name of that guy in the, in the comment section if you would like. But there's no amount of logic that's going to get you to this end. Whereas even statistics might be a little difficult, and this certainly would not have been if I was alive in 1973, or I was, but if I was analyzing disappearances in 1973, would I looked at Norman Prater and said, my best guess is that he's probably still alive and he's going to get hit by a car 6 months from now? No. Let's see here. What everybody is saying. Rockport, now 1 hour down the road from you. Okay, Cherie D. Hey, Cherie, here we go. Yeah. Lori, so no one identified him at the time of the accident? No. No, he went unidentified for 52 years, Lori. David Glenn Lewis, thank you, Rockford, for looking that up. I've tried to reason that one out, and I got nothing. Yeah, there's no logic that's going to solve David Glenn Lewis's. Zero. Just like there's no logic that could get you to what happened to Norman Prater. And this is why when I talk to guests and other people, when they start, well, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to make sense. There's nothing saying that anything regarding these disappearances have to make sense. I think when people do that, they're just looking at TV. They're looking at, well, these scripts are very logical and they do this and then they do this and then they do this and then do this. Whereas in reality, we have all of these examples, at least in my expertise, disappearances, where these disappearances get resolved and there's no amount of logic that would have got you there. For some of them. Some of them, yes. A lot of them, no. A lot of them, no. And so this is why when I'm analyzing disappearances, I put odds on things. I think this is most likely what happened, given what I know about all of these other disappearances. The thing is, you can only do things that way and assign statistical numbers and percentages to outcomes if you know about a lot of other disappearances. That's why the Unfound database has been created. That's the only way you can do that. It's no different than, and you've heard, sometimes we talk about if they did odds in Vegas for disappearances, it's the same thing. What are the odds that Brian Schaefer was murdered that night? What are the odds that Brian Schaefer went off and started a new life? What are the odds that Brian Schaefer, accidentally got hit by a car and then somebody covered up? You can put different percentages to each of those, but you can only do that, in an educated way if you understand a lot of disappearances, if you know a lot about disappearances. Who said any of these things to have to make sense? As I told somebody recently, it doesn't have to make sense. We only have to attach a statistical probability to it. That's all. And sometimes that is difficult. But these people out there, whoever they are, if they're trying to come to logical conclusions with these disappearances, good luck. Sometimes logic works. It's just not very often. For example, with Esther Westenbarger, maybe that's a very good example. Yes, given now that we know a little bit more about people and their cars when they go missing, especially regarding, because of all the scuba teams and groups and channels that are out there now. But I don't know logically if you could ever get to the point of saying she went into a pond that wasn't even on her drive home. Because logically, what are you going to do? Well, she was supposed to be headed home. Well, here's the route, the quickest route home. And that's the way she was probably going. And of course, they didn't find her or her car on that pass. So something else would have happened. So something else must have happened. That's where logic can lead you wrong. Whereas if you look at percentages, well, a large percentage of the time when people in their cars go missing, they end up in a body of water. And then you start looking at bodies of water, no matter where the body of water is. And of course, this is something that I didn't understand way back when we featured Esther's disappearance. But we now know that to be true. Once again, all of these people, for example, all these people who have called for rides, and then when their rides showed up, they weren't there. Crystal Morrison, Kevin Newen, Deborah Bowman, Shane Fell. There is no amount of logic that will ever explain that. Why? Because logic tells you when you call for rides, you wait till your ride gets there. So this is a perfect example of that. And that's why, I probably would have talked about it anyway. But there's no logical way you're going to get from Norman Prater going missing walking with friends to him he's still alive 6 months later and he gets hit by a car, in Rockport. I'm just not going to get there. Now, on the other hand, let's say that, the hit and run happens that night and it's in the Dallas area. Then probably it gets solved right away. And probably then logic might really help. But we know how many, crazy resolutions we get to these disappearances that it's just better to use percentages, but you have to know disappearances to do that. I'm looking at that was bizarre, Rockford. It was a bizarre one. Yeah, thanks for getting that, Rockford. Thanks for taking the moment. Rockford, no logic with Judy Smith either. I always think of her when I think of Lewis. Yes. She was the woman who went to New York City and then ended up being found in the woods in North Carolina. Yeah. Now we can start to talk things out a little bit. We certainly with any of these, you can talk some of these things out, but you're just guessing. You're really just guessing, and there's no logic. And, when I go to web sleuths, right, unfortunately I go to Reddit or some blogs that I read when I'm looking up disappearances I may run, and people start saying, well, what makes sense is, and this seems most logical and everything. It's just not a good way. It's just not. And maybe that'll come up at this convention in May, and then I'll start getting rotten vegetables thrown at me. Shree says we have more data now. Yeah, we do, and we should use it, right? The data is going to tell you more than your mind is. Thank you, Sheree. Philadelphia, but yep, that's her. Yes, Philadelphia. All right, not New York, Philadelphia. All right. So that is that disappearance. Once again, if you want to look it up for yourself, this is Norman Prater, Prater, who went missing in January of 1973, got hit by a car on July 9th, not identified until 2025. And I'll say it once again, there's no way that that's the oldest Texas disappearance. There is no way, but I digress. All right, let's take a look at the missing mayor. Hello, the cake. What's going on? Yeah, the cake. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to eat my diet. I'm not allowed to eat cake these days either. And I don't have a big sugar craving in my life. What gets me more in trouble is meat. And I'm more of a crunchy guy. Like, I love Cheez-Its. Cheez-Its, they're not going to kill you anything, but if you're trying to lose weight, you shouldn't be eating Cheez-Its. And I love me some Cheez-Its. Don't even get me started on Cheez-Its. In fact, Cheez-Its, like when I go to, drive to my dad's, that's one of my driving foods, Cheez-Its. No good. So I can't eat them, but there you go. But they're in that same family, like with the cake. And hello, cake. Good to see you tonight. Yeah, no way. Thank you, Cherie. All right, let's talk about this missing mayor. And so I'm going to now take the discussion in a little bit of a different direction. The skeletal remains of a human found on a beach in Washington nearly 20 years ago have been identified as belonging to a former Oregon mayor who went missing in 2006. Clarence how about that? Asher, Asher, was 72 years old when he was pronounced legally dead after he disappeared, and you can find his obituary out there, on a fishing trip at Tillamook Bay, a small inlet on the coast of Oregon. The Coast Guard launched an extensive search operation at the time that was quizzically stopped. I want to come back to that. Just a day after Asher vanished. Nearly 2 months later, human remains were found on a beach in Taholah, which is an unincorporated village on the Quinault Indian Reservation. I'm sorry if I killed that name, along the Washington coast. The Grays Harbor County Sheriff's Office and the coroner's office attempted to identify the remains but could not find no meaningful leads. Come back to that. The remains were registered in on NamUs and eventually buried alongside other unresolved cases. However, in 2025, the coroner's office and King County medical examiner sent the evidence to a lab in Texas, where maybe Othram, where a scientist managed to extract DNA and build a profile for the person. And that person was identified as Ed Asher, who had gone missing once again during a fishing trip. Yes. All right. Let me move down here. The company said it created a detailed DNA profile with a sample from a relative of Asher's and was able to link the skeleton to fossils lost mare. I guess that was the name of the town where he was the mayor. Who was Edwin Asher? He was born in Salem on April 2nd of 1934. He was raised in Astoria, which I think is where they shot the movie The Goonies. He moved to Fossil, Oregon in 1952, where he worked as a lineman for the Fossil Telephone Company, where he worked until retiring in 1995. Asher's second wife, Helen, passed away in 2018 after a long-fought battle against cancer at 85 years old. The couple boasts of an extended family that includes 21 grandchildren, and by the time Helen passed away, 17 great-grandchildren. All right. Now, you should know that Edwin Asher's disappearance, it might have been on NamUs, but by the time, of course, as soon as these people are identified, it's removed from NamUs. Whereas Megan over at the Charlie Project, she will leave them on and she'll just type resolved on the page. Edwin Asher's disappearance was never on the Charlie Project, even though he was a former mayor of a town. Now, I'm sitting here. I want to see what everybody is saying here. No way. Hello, JR6427. How are you? What's the mayor's name? Ed Asher, Asher. Cheez-Its are the best. Yes, they are. Extra toasty Cheez-Its. I just like the regular ones, Joni, myself. Well, I could not eat cheese. I would make my own. Hello, Ashley. D. I used to make my own. Nick loves them. I used real cheese and put it in the oven. He loves them. Good for you, D. Kids can eat that stuff. But yeah, the mayor's name is Edwin Asher. He went missing in 2006. Now, what is hard for me to understand, as I just read, that he went missing during this fishing trip. His remains washed up on shore not really that long after he went missing. And somehow, now granted, he was from Oregon, and his remains washed ashore in Washington. But still, it's hard to understand why. I mean, how many people are washing up on the shores of Washington? How many people are going missing during fishing trips off the coast of Oregon and Washington? I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But certainly, I live in a state where people are going out into the water all the time. Of course, we've covered some disappearances. Of course, the 3 Canadian young men who went missing south of here. We covered the disappearance of Tony Schwark out in the Atlantic off of Florida. Certainly, it happens here in Florida, being that we have this huge coastline from the Panhandle the whole way around, the whole way up to the state of Georgia. But I'm fairly sure that if somebody went out on a fishing trip over there in Jacksonville, let's say, and didn't come back, and then remains washed up on the shore in Georgia a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, you would think that that would be solved pretty well, because wouldn't it just be, all right, somebody washed up on shore, we should probably check and see if anybody's gone missing while fishing recently. And maybe we shouldn't just limit it to the state of Georgia. Maybe we need to look at maybe missing persons case, people that have been born missing out of South Carolina and also Florida. I think that's how it would go. But instead, with this guy, he goes missing in Oregon. He washes up a few weeks later in Washington, and they can't put two and two together. Why was it that did they not know that this guy went missing in Washington? And so that brings me, maybe that's it, because I will tell you, to try to get a better handle on this, I did a search on newspapers.com. Were there any reports, written news articles about Ed Asher going missing? Remember, he's the former mayor of a town. Usually that would get a little attention. I couldn't find one article written about his disappearance at all. Not in 2006, not in 2007, not in 2008, nothing. Instead, what I found was his obituary. And he was declared dead pretty. Once again, I don't do sensationalism. But I have, I'll remind all of you know, like 400 disappearances now. He went missing. Let's see here. He went missing. Let's see. I forget the date. Let's see here. Do they actually have the date? Come on now, Ed. He went missing. It doesn't say her. For some reason, this article doesn't say. But he goes missing within the same month. So he missing, let's say he went missing like January 9th or something like that. His obituary was in the paper before the month was over. That's how quickly he was declared deceased. Now, I get it. He didn't swim to shore or anything. And I can see why they would presume him dead, but you should know, and once again, it's not something that comes up that often. Most of the people who are featured on Unfound have not been declared deceased. And of course, we do disappearances way back to the 80s, 70s, and 60s, 50s, 40s. Most of them have never been declared deceased. And even with the ones who have been, there are what you would say there are extenuating circumstances. And even that takes a little while. Not shorter than a month. It is a little weird. And that's why I want to go back to how this article is written. This adverb is really holding up a lot in this sense, as we say these days. The Coast Guard launched an extensive search operation that was quizzically stopped just a day after Asher vanished. Now, of course, we know with the young man who went missing here in Florida, the search certainly lasted more than a day. And we can think of many, many people who have gone missing out there in the water. And whether it's in the Atlantic Ocean, the Gulf, the Pacific, wherever, we know those searches usually go longer than a day. Like when, these people, whether they commit suicide or whatever, falling off a cruise ship. Those searches are certainly done for longer than a day. And quizzically stopped just a day later. And once again, no article written about his disappearance either. Both are unique. On top of that, just doing Google stuff, you can't find if he was with anybody. Was he out there by himself? How exactly did this happen? Nothing. So I guess I have to say it. What exactly happened out there? I mean, like I said, you know all of me. All of you know me. I don't do sensationalism. But we know when these kinds of situations happen, usually there are articles, more than one. And if the person, even, I mean, for example, we just had this situation, it's kind of been forgotten now. The guys are still missing. We had this situation out in the Gulf, right out to my left somewhere. Those two guys that went out, they're still missing. It's their boat. I mean, that got nationwide attention. This got nothing. And then the guys declared deceased just a few weeks later. And then on top of that, Washington has a body wash up in shore, and it takes 20 years to figure out who this person was. It does give you the idea that people were trying to really, really move on from this really, really fast. Doesn't it? No news stories. Going back, of course, Facebook, I don't think existed, but did anybody post anything on MySpace about this? It just makes you wonder. Let me see what everybody's saying. Hello, Ashley. Yeah, we got it. I had, to totally change topics for a moment. I have tried the extra toasties, Joe. I have. They just didn't do much for me. They're fine. I wouldn't say I dislike them. If those were the only kind of Cheez-Its that were available, I would eat them. But I didn't find them to be that special. Now, the ones I do find special are the extra cheesy ones, of course, which means they're extra bad for you. But I do think that those are good. But the thing about those, it gets to you after a while. What are good about just regular Cheez-Its is that you can just eat the whole box and not feel like you're overdoing yourself. That's the danger of course. Whereas you get the extra cheesy, you kind of feel a little bogged down trying to get through that box with all that cheese and everything. So, I can't beat the classic. That when declared deceased, does the search for a body stop? I think, Joni, I think the way it's supposed to be is that, you shouldn't declare somebody deceased for a while. And like I said, once, many people, I mean, I don't know, 90% of the people who have been featured on Unfound were not declared deceased. So sometimes it never happens, Joni. Of course, the search, I don't know what the right search time would be for this. 3 days? 5 days? I don't know. Surely they shouldn't declare somebody deceased in a few days without a body. Surely not. So it's one of the weirder news stories, and it has nothing to do with him being mayor or anything else. It's just a weird set of circumstances that no news on a, of course you want to put that in there, I guess, if you want. A mayor or a former mayor goes missing, no news stories. We don't know what happened. We don't know how he went into the water. We don't know, did he fall into the water? Was it an accident? Was he by himself? Was he with his family? Where, what exactly happened? I mean, if there were other people there, did he go right under the water immediately? Or were they all asleep on this boat and they got up and he was gone? We don't know. Zero. He's missing, and then within a month, they're declaring him deceased. And then body washes up on shore, and it doesn't seem like his family was concerned enough to even be monitoring anything to see if any bodies were washing up on shore, whether in Oregon, Washington, or California. I'm staring at the camera right now. It kind of sets off my spidey sense a little bit. And I start thinking, are we sure this just wasn't? I'm not saying it was murder, just so we're clear. I am not saying it was murder. But could it have been a suicide? And of course, we know if person commits suicide, guess what? No life insurance. And was that the reason they rushed to get him declared deceased and everything so fast? He was out in that boat with other people and jumped in on purpose, and they couldn't save him. Didn't know where he went. He washes up, and then they don't want to. Maybe they're even hoping that he's not found because they know it's a suicide. This is something that I think circumstantially you could make that argument. And then they wanted to, get you. Of course, if you don't know how that works, being that my mother died, you get the death certificates and you start sending them out to a life insurance company and wherever else. And, of course, I was a life insurance beneficiary from my mother's death. So I know about that. Just wonder. Just something to throw out there. Tanya says the search is not supposed to stop, but unfortunately, by the time most people have stopped, usually. Yeah. Rockford, be wary of declaring someone deceased after going missing on a fishing trip. See Bader and Lawrence. Yes, Rockford. Cranky, is it true that families have to wait at least 3 days before declaration? Nope. Tanya, a lot of times they do that for legal and or financial reasons. I know, Tanya, but, it seems overtly quick. And, once again, if there were a bunch of news stories and they declared him deceased and everything, okay. And if there were no stories, but they didn't clear him deceased at all, okay. It just seems like a weird combination. No stories, declared deceased, and his body washes ashore, and seemingly nobody does anything about it. Here's what I think I know. I think that most of my guests usually are pretty on top of things, although we haven't done many disappearances like that with going missing in a body of water, body eventually coming up on shore. But I'm pretty sure my guests, if that was their kind of disappearance, they would be monitoring everything. It seems this family was not, because I'm guessing pretty sure when Washington had that body, it was announced somewhere, even though I couldn't find anything right now. I'm sure they announced it. Hey, body washed up on shore today. Family did nothing. I think I've made my point. A lot of times they do legal and financial reasons, right? Well, Chance was declared deceased. Yeah, once again, unique. Very rare, though, D. Very rare. Very rare. But, how long did it take for him to be declared deceased? And they certainly didn't do an obituary for him and everything, did they? And, of course, Chance's disappearance got a lot of local attention, news attention, too. So, yeah, I don't think that parallels with this very well. But once again, most of the disappearances on Unfound, no declaration of being deceased. For a lot of different reasons. Main one you don't do it is because that just gives police one more reason to not do anything. Don't do that. All right, let's move on to, so once again, you want to look that up. The guy's name was Ed Asher. His full name was Clarence Edwin Asher. He went missing in 2006. He was 72 years old. Tanya, I'm saying legal and financial, whether it's good or bad way. Yeah. Okay, Tanya. 3 years, not 3 days, Cranky. Yeah. What are you talking about? 3 years, not 3 days. Regarding what? Not sure. Sometimes I know some of you are behind in what you're saying because I'm moving pretty fast. All right, let's move on to Timothy Foltz, in which I'm going to read an article that I downloaded today. Not that one. Which one is it? Let me take a moment to find the right article. I'm going to talk to you about a guy who probably committed a jewelry heist and got away with it. Timothy Foltz out of North Carolina. There it is right there. All right, I'm going to read the article. This article comes to us from the Charlotte News. And this is Charlotte News, May 17th of 1982. May 17th, 1982. Concord. So this is the same city where Crystal Morrison went missing. Concord jewel theft, still a mystery. Let me zoom this out a little bit. Law enforcement authorities have been unable to resolve the mysterious disappearance January 25th of the manager of a downtown jewelry store and $300,000 worth of jewelry, diamond jewelry, taken from his store's safe. Ilo Foltz of Van Wert, Ohio, mother of Colonel Jewelry Store manager Timothy Barton Foltz, is waiting for answers. She has been living in her 27-year-old's son's Tulip Avenue apartment since February 14th, asking questions and hoping. Mrs. Foltz, 63, plans to return home later this month after giving up her son's apartment. I felt like being right here where it all happened, maybe I could find some answers, she said. I know the minute I walked into this apartment, I felt better. I felt like I belonged here. I don't think that Tim, her son, did it. I feel he was a victim. I really feel it will be solved. I'm still going to hang on to that. He's alive and keep praying that I hear from him. It's been a comfort to be here, and one of the hardest things for me to have to do is pack his belongings and go back to Ohio. Members of the Concord Police Department and the FBI continue to investigate the incident. Concord Police Chief Jack Moore said his department is proceeding on two possible assumptions: that Mr. Foltz was a victim of foul play, or that Mr. Foltz himself took the store's diamonds and disappeared. Neither assumption has yielded answers. We're still actively investigating and following all leads, but there's nothing new. We're running into a dead end. And once again, this is a disappearance that is still unsolved here in 2026. During the initial police investigation, Chief Moore said someone entered the jewelry store at 104 Main Street Mall between 5 p.m. Saturday, January 23rd, and 8:30 a.m. Monday, January 25th. So a time frame of about 36 hours. He said interviews with David and English, owners of the business, indicated Mrs. English and Mr. Foltz closed the business at 5 p.m. January 23rd, so that's Saturday, and that Mr. Foltz locked the safe at that time. Mr. English opened the business on January 25th and found all entrances into the store and the store safe properly locked. The burglar alarm system in the off position with Mr. Foltz's key still inserted in the alarm mechanism. When he unlocked the safe, Mr. English noticed a large amount of diamond jewelry missing. Police interviews with the Englishes indicated the safe combination was known only by the Englishes and Mr. Foltz. and that the keys to deactivate the alarm system were also held only by those three people. So the owners, husband and wife, I guess, and the guy who went missing. On January 28th, authorities found Mr. Foltz's locked 1978 Monte Carlo parked at the Holiday Inn off Interstate 85 in Concord. There were no clues in the car. Mrs. Foltz said her son, originally from Elida, Ohio, came from gemologist school in California in September 1980, so roughly 2 years before this happened, to become manager at Colonel Jewelers. He told me last July when I was here that he was the happiest he had ever been in his life. She said her son, separated from his wife since April 1981, was a warm, outgoing, generous person who never met a stranger. I find it hard to believe that my son ate breakfast here, read the paper, and walked out the door to rob a jewelry store. I can't accept this fact yet that he's dead, but everything tries to tell me he is, and sometimes I almost give up. Mrs. Foltz thinks her son would go to her home in Van Wert if he returns. There's nothing here for him anymore. Colonial Jewelers, of which she said her son owned 50 shares, was sold last week and now has a new manager. So these people get robbed and then they sell the business. Interesting. According to Mr. English, who said he is still hoping for the return of Mr. Foltz, the assets of Colonial Jewelers Incorporated were sold to Aubrey Flick of Lake Wiley, South Carolina. Mr. Flick, contacted at the store last week, said the sale was finalized May 5th and that the business would continue with the same lines and the same location with a new manager. Mrs. English, he said, would continue to work in the store on a part-time basis. And this is still unsolved disappearance all these years later. So as what I usually do, we got about a half hour left. I'm going to go through, of course, things that would help our analysis. And then I'm going to, break it down, as they say. Let's see what everybody... 3 years, not 3 days. Oh, did I say 3 days? Did I misspoke? Thank you for keeping me honest, Cranky. Cranky, you can't declare someone deceased immediately, but most places have a presumption of death rule, often after 7 years of being missing without contact, allowing the estate settlement. Yeah. Well, with certainly with Edwin Asher, that all happened a lot more quickly. And like I said, his obituary was done before the month was up, and his body has not been identified or anything yet. It's weird. I know all of you think it's weird, but anybody listen out there, it's weird. It's pretty weird. All right, Timothy Foltz. Here are some things now you should know. Odds-wise, instead of logic, even logic might help him with this one. It's overwhelmingly likely that Timothy Foltz did this, and he did it on his own. All right. So I'm just going to put that there. I'll come back to it. But what would help our analysis? Some things that, we could add in. Certainly a lot of holes in this puzzle looking at the entire picture. What are some things that could be added to it? So, for example, if I were to talk to somebody in his family, and you should know, I did track down the woman he was married to at the time, and I did send her an email today. So maybe I'll hear back from her. I was able to track her down. She's still alive. It's what I do. But if I were to talk to her, here are some of the questions, some of the topics that would be on my mind. What was his money situation? We start thinking of somebody robbing a place. We generally think that, well, they might have money problems. That's not a given or anything. But what was Timothy's money situation at the time? As it says in the article, they were separated at the time. We know that divorces are not fun on your finances, paying lawyers and things, but it doesn't say they were getting divorced. It was separated. Of course, usually people get separated, get divorced. But what was his money situation? What was the status of the separation? If I could talk to his now, I guess, ex-wife, would I say, did it look like you two were going to get back together? What was going on? How much money was being spent on liars? What was he saying? What was he doing? Of course, he's an ex-wife, and you always have to qualify that. She's going to be the ex-wife. She's being truthful. I don't know. But, and I did track down, by the way, has a sister, and you should know, I sent her a message too. It'd be fascinating to talk to these people. Did he ever talk about places that he wanted to go? He went somewhere. If we believe that he robbed this jewelry store, I don't have a hard time saying the word jewelry. If he robbed this jewelry store, he went somewhere. How hard did the police work to find the jewelry? Now, this is something that I'm going to get into the analysis, because just within the last few years, we had this story about this guy who, he worked at a bank and robbed his own bank and was able to stay disappeared for his entire life. And it wasn't until he's on his deathbed that he said anything. Jewelry is a completely different animal. Now, if it's just diamonds, that aren't in a necklace or anything, that might be a little easier, but it was actually jewelry. That is something different. Nina says, I'm not getting notified. I don't know what to tell you, Nina. I'm sorry you missed everything up until this point. You forgot tonight. Better check your bell and make sure it's dinged. I don't know. Sorry about that. You can catch it in the replay. That's okay. Thanks for tuning in anyway, Nina. I know, even though I know you're late. Did he have problems with the owners? How was that relationship going between Tim Foltz and the people who owned the store? In addition, a question might be, did Tim know that the store was going to get sold, or did the store get sold because this theft happened? Now, remember, it's $300,000 in 1982 money. That's over $1 million now in jewelry that he stole. $300,000 in 1982 money is big bucks now. Big bucks then, big bucks now. So did he have any problems with the owners? Let's put it this way. Did he know they were going to sell it? Was he ticked off that maybe he wanted to buy the store or something and they didn't want to sell it to him? Something to think about. What was the insurance status of the store? It is interesting to me that I'll come back to that. What was the insurance status of the store? Of course, we ran into that. Remember from a few years ago, of course, it went unsolved for a little while. Remember the jewelry that was getting trucked from San Francisco back to LA? The two drivers in the Brinks truck or whatever company it was stopped at a rest stop and the thing got robbed. Remember all of that? And they've finally figured out what happened there. But there's still this ongoing that's in court about how much the stuff was insured for and how much the owners of the jewelry are going to get paid. So what was the insurance status of the store overall? And what was the insurance status of those items that were taken? Be interesting to know. Who was the last person to see Tim Foltz? So the woman who was the owner of the place saw him on Saturday. What did he do Saturday night? Sunday? Does anybody know what was going on? Of course, we always want to do that in any disappearance. Who was the last person to talk to the missing person, see the missing person? Is that believable? Can that person be trusted? If we could trust that person, well, how was the missing person acting? What was the status of wherever he was living? Did he have a roommate? Was he living alone? Of course, he was separated. I'm guessing he and his wife are not living together. How was that going? What kind of friends did Tim have in Concord? I realize he wasn't from there. Seems like his wife lived there, but did they move there? Did he meet her there? Did he have any female or male friends? It doesn't matter. That he was communicating with during this time? What was he saying to them about his divorce or separation? And also, after this all happened, did his family, did his friends, did his separated wife, estranged wife, did she get any weird calls, any weird letters, anything like that? So these are some of the questions that come to my mind as I think about this disappearance. And like I said, as you can tell, I would be heavily going in the direction that Tim did this all by himself. And we also have to realize there doesn't seem to be anybody else missing. And so, from Concord or wherever, that we can sync up with Tim's disappearance. So it's not like he and some other guy pulled this off and they went on the run, or he found a new woman. It was like a Bonnie and Clyde situation and they went on the run. She's missing too. There's nothing that matches up, that is congruent with Tim's disappearance to attach another disappearance to it, because I looked. So almost certainly, I'm not saying I would bet my life on that, but Tim did this. So my analysis, though, it's obvious, of course, what's a mother to say in an article, but certainly his family is ignoring the obvious. She's trying to put the best spin on this. Now, you should know, his mother died just a couple years later. She died in 1984. Very sadly. But certainly his family is trying to put the best spin on this as they could. Certainly we have to believe that being separated, there has to be some sort of causation and correlation between the separation and him doing this. I guess what I'm saying is, I think if his marriage is just fine, even though we know men are leaving their wives all the time. Richard Hoagland left his wife and started a new life. Of course, Mary Jane Van Gilder was married, had children. She went off and started a new life. I guess, I don't know if she ever technically got married or not, but she had kids with her new guy in her life, and she pulled that off for 45 years. Still, I would say that if Tim's marriage is going better than it was at the time, certainly the odds drop dramatically that he would ever steal from a jewelry store and then go on the run. Certainly. So we have to think about the causation and correlation between all of this. The key being left behind. I think that this is highly symbolic. Why would he do that? It's certainly possible that he forgot it. But how you put this all together, and certainly that I'll get to the planning here in a moment. But doing all of this, thinking this all out, and you leave your key, where was the key left? Was it in I think the key was actually left in the alarm system. To me, that's a kind of big FU to everybody, to the owners of the store, to his wife, to investigators, because I do not believe that was a mistake. I know maybe his family putting a nice spin on it might have said, well, somebody else left the key there, trying to, make it look like Tim did this. They really wanted to make it look like this, so they left his key there. Well, if it's not the owners, it has to be him. What are we talking about? It's a giant FU. Yeah, it was me. I did it. Here's me turning my keys back in. I'm out of here. So that leads me to believe that this wasn't just something where I think Timothy Foltz woke up one day and decided he was going to do this. I have to believe that there was something that went on with him working at the store Maybe not. That doesn't mean it happened 3 days before or 5 days before, but something, it's resentment, something that was just something little, and it continues to fester and it continues to happen. And, whether it's in relationships or whatever else, that it continues to fester. Oh, this person really doesn't respect who I am. And even though it's not anything outrageous, it's not, physical abuse or mental abuse or anything. It just seems like you were being disrespected and the person keeps doing it. This is the idea that I get from this. And I will go back to what I said before. Given that this store got sold just a few months after this happened, I think the instigator was that the Englishes are probably retiring. He's gone to school. He's been working for them, busting his butt. And now they're selling it to somebody else. Maybe they didn't even consider. I don't know. Of course, I don't know what money situation you're going to probably go through a divorce. What kind of cash flow would you have? But maybe he did. Who knows? But he wanted an opportunity to own the business, and they weren't willing to send it to him and sell it to him. And then on top of that, maybe he also found out that this new owner is going to come in and clean house and he's going to be out of a job. Now, I realize that certainly wouldn't be enough for me to rob a store. Certainly not. Like I keep saying, I am too good looking to go to jail. So I would never do anything like this, ever. And I've been, pissed off with some people in my life. Never do anything that's going to get you sent to jail. Don't do that, because that might just happen. But Tim's not me. But I think this would then also explain how he has been able to get away with this for almost 44 years. That it was something that happened maybe weeks, if not months, before he did this, and he began to plan. Well, if I'm going to do this, how am I going to get away with this? They're screwing me over. Well, if I want to screw them back, if I'm going to screw them back, I might go to jail. But if that's the case, then I'm going to make it worth my while, and I'm really going to plan this out so I don't get caught. And a good way to do that is still $300,000 in 1982 money. So I have to believe this was planned. He didn't just go into the weekend and say, you know what, I'm going to rip this store off. That did not happen. Now, moving on to some more analysis. This is, could this be done in the 21st century? Maybe. Could this be done in? Maybe, but it would be a lot tougher. Because I think here in the 21st century, what would happen? The pictures, they probably, if this business is on the up and up and is doing it the right way, they should have pictures of everything in their store. And so when things get stolen, you could post it. And then what would happen? Tim takes those items. Well, he's going to have a hell of a time trying to sell them. Whereas you could certainly get away with that in 1982, but I'll get to that in a moment. So you could still do it now, but I think it would be a lot harder. Maybe not to disappear, but if you want to liquidate that stuff, going to be very difficult. Now, the other man who did this, his name was Theodore Conrad. He was working at a bank, 1969. He ripped off his own bank, $200,000 in 1969 money. So big bucks. He was able to live almost his entire life without getting caught. In fact, it wasn't until he was on his deathbed with cancer that he told his family who he really was. How was he able to pull that off? Well, first of all, he took cash instead of jewelry. And the fact is, for the rest of his life, he never broke the law. He ended up using that money to open a used car dealership. He got married. He had kids. He wasn't carousing around, getting drunk, no DUIs, no jaywalking, nothing. That is the way he was able to do that. And I think he died in like 2017, but he pulled that off for, almost 50 years. And that's one of the keys. If you're going to do something like this, you got to really mind your P's and Q's. So maybe Tim Foltz did the same thing. But like I said, the big difference is Theodore Conrad had cash. And I'm guessing nobody knew what the serial numbers were on the bills. And there was no marking on the bills, anything. It was just like having cash in your pocket. And he could probably go to different banks, put a little money here, put a little money there, and then over time probably consolidated it all into one bank, probably, instead of having 10 or 15 different banks. That would be a lot easier than the situation that Tim Foltz was in. Also, I think one of the reasons maybe that Tim Foltz is still missing, it was a low-profile crime. Even though it got a lot of news attention, nobody died, nobody got hurt. The Englishes certainly got their insurance to cover it. And and maybe you might have been of the opinion, could it be being that they knew they were getting out of the business, that, could the Englishes themselves be a part of this? Could they have enticed Timothy to do this? Because knowing he'd get the jewelry, they'd get the insurance money. They knew maybe he wanted to run off. It's a totally different way you might look at it. Maybe that he wasn't ticked at them. They were actually accomplices. Maybe. But like I said, jewelry, more risky than dumping the money. He had to have had some plan, had to know he couldn't dump it locally. So wherever he went, it wasn't in North Carolina. In fact, he probably was anywhere near the East Coast. Probably if he were going to do this, he would had to have thought, you know what, if I need to turn this jewelry into money, I got to get as far away from North Carolina as possible. Maybe he went to Mexico. Maybe he went to Canada. So that's something to think about, maybe another country. Would he have stayed in the jewelry business? Sell the goods from his new store? That would be brash, but it's not the craziest of ideas. You just, hey, I'm a jeweler, and guess what? This is the first jewelry I have on display. I'm out here in Oregon. And in 1982 terms, you could probably do that. Probably. And we have to remember this. It's not like he could necessarily go to pawn shops, because you steal that, you're only going to get a percentage. Granted, it's still going to be better than nothing. But as we like Pawn Stars on all those shows, they don't pay retail. So if he took $300,000 and went to different pawn shops along the West Coast selling that stuff, I guess it'd still be okay. Maybe he gets half. $150,000. I guess that's still better than nothing, but we know these people, they're greedy. These people are greedy. And I think that it would be tough, knowing that he broke the law and how much trouble he's going to get into. Is he really going to take half? It sounds doubtful to me. Also, as we learned from Robert Hoagland, not Richard Hoagland, who left his wife and got away with it for like decades, but Robert Hoagland, that guy who left his family and then was found living alone, and he died of a sickness. You remember that within the last few years. What we also learn about his disappearance is it sometimes takes people looking the other way. With Robert Hoagland, the people who were around him in his new life, they didn't know that he was a guy who was missing and walked away from his life, but they knew something was up. The way, he would be nebulous about his past and all, he would only take money under the table, on and on and on. They knew something was up. And I think maybe with Timothy Foltz, it would be kind of the same thing. That if you got to know Timothy in his new life going as John Smith, you would just have to accept that sometimes he would be a little evasive on things. And in that way, people kind of help these types get away with with what they're doing. Right now in 2026, I think that still the best way to catch Timothy Foltz was probably be through DNA, like what happened with Mary Jane Van Gilder. Now, if Timothy Foltz lived the rest of his life, never had any kids or anything, then that's going to be impossible to do. But if he started a new life, there's no way in 1982 terms that he would know that DNA would become such a thing in the 1990s. No way. So you'd have to guess, statistics say he probably would start a new life and meet somebody new and maybe have kids. And we just have to hope that one of those kids uses one of these DNA places that collects it and get lucky someday, like happened with Mary Jane Van Gilder. So anybody who's listening to this, if there are any kids out there, if your father is a little bit nebulous about his past, or maybe women living, he dated a guy or married a guy, maybe Timothy Foltz is dead and his widower is out there. If you had a husband or boyfriend who was really nebulous about his past and maybe showed a little more knowledge regarding jewelry than you would think he should, and maybe he, talks about North Carolina, but doesn't seem like he was ever there, or talks about Ohio or wherever Timothy was originally from, but doesn't seem that he was ever there. These are things that people out there should be paying attention to. And if Timothy Foltz, is going to get caught for doing this. But this does sound like one of those FU crimes and FU disappearances. Interesting. Maybe I would love to make that an episode sometime very, very soon. So let's see what everybody's saying. Cranky. I worked with a guy that slept in his car at work. A coworker brought a pistol in to sell it to another coworker. He puts it in a desk. The other guy sees it, takes it, holds up a gas station. Oh my goodness. Kathleen, not sure if I missed this, but you did talk about his outside interest hobbies. Yeah, like when they were looking at Whitey Bulger, they looked at places associated with non-crime interests. Yeah, that's a great idea, Kathleen. Thank you for adding that. Great idea. Yes. All right, let's go to the disappearance. And in fact, our guest has actually been in the chat tonight. I'm not interviewing her till Wednesday, though. I'm really looking forward to that, Tanya, if you're still here. We are going to the state of Alabama. We've been there a few times so far. We're going to be talking about the disappearance of Tyler Johnson, who went missing seemingly. The date is a little fuzzy. May 16th of 2023. And we're going to be talking about Detroit, Alabama. We're going to be talking about Tupelo, Mississippi. Kind of like we did with Rebecca Henderson. Remember disappearing going way back, where it was like right there on the border between those two states. But this is a situation. Tyler went missing before he went missing, in that he was out of contact with most of the people in his life. Then all of a sudden, he's on their radar again. He gets taken to a hospital, maybe going through some sort of mental health crisis, leaves the hospital, and is never seen again, even though we're for sure that he did make it back to his house, because the paperwork from the hospital was there, but nobody saw him walking. His neighbors didn't see him, nothing. And then a lot of his possessions were found on one of his family's piece of property where he had originally been when they took him to the hospital. And we're going to talk about the things that were found there that are going to catch your attention. And, you're going to have to decide, is there a foul play angle to this disappearance? Is this a mental health disappearance? What kind of disappearance are we talking about here? And you're going to have a lot to go through, because his Aunt Tanya has done a lot of great work. And and I think that this is very personal to her because she's one of the people responsible for this piece of property where Tyler was before he got taken to the hospital that day. So once again, reminds me of the case you did where the woman kind of faded away. The title of her episode referenced that. I believe she was from Wyoming or the Dakotas. I'm going to have to look. That's not ringing a bell right now, Rockford. I'll have to look that up. But this Friday, and the interview is being done on Wednesday, Tyler Johnson, young man, he went missing seemingly on May 16th of 2023. We're going to be talking about Tupelo, Mississippi. We're going to be talking about Detroit, Alabama, or maybe they pronounce it differently down there. We'll figure that out. And his aunt, Tanya, is the guest. So 2 p.m. Eastern on Friday. Of course, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, all the places that you can find Unfound. You can almost guarantee this is going to be like a 2-part episode. I'm anticipating the interview is going to be long like the one last week, so I will split it up into a couple different pieces, but of course they will both come out on the same day. So that is it for tonight. I got everything. Timothy Foltz, the missing mayor, Texas case solved. Told you about the convention coming up in May. And I think I still had stuff left over, but that's good. That's good enough for tonight. Great live show. Thank you so much. You're welcome, Lisa. Charlie, good to see all of you. Once again, keep your heads on swivels out there. Be aware of your surroundings. Do not get lured anywhere. Do not end up on my podcast. Keep your heads on swivels. Charlie, say hi to your sons for me. Good to see you, Glenn, tonight. And I love getting your emails, Glenn. And we will do this all again next Monday. And yeah, that's what we'll be doing. That's it. Everybody have a great night. Have a safe week. And you'll hear me and Tanya on Friday. Good night.